Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to read another Curbside story about some findings. Maybe something interesting will come up on this episode. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the part that still makes my palms sweat. I loaded a stranger's car pile into my truck, drove it home, and later that night something inside the dresser knocked back. I'm not a collector, I'm not chasing a viral curbside score. I am a working guy who's gotten older faster than his paycheck did. My heat was one bad week away from getting shut off, and the roof over my kitchen has been one more season for 3 seasons. When you are staring at that kind of math, you stop arguing with your pride. You just do what keeps the lights on. So, on a great afternoon, I took my beat up pickup into the nicer neighborhood. Big lawns, quiet streets, the kind of place where people swap out furniture because they bored of it. I've done the loop before. Most days you find nothing worse than gas, a cracked lamp, a sagging chair, a box of books that smell like a basement. I almost turned around after 20 minutes because it was the same story. Then I hit a side street where everything felt paused. No kids, no music, no holiday lights, just one long driveway and a pile at the curb that looked like it had been placed, not dumped. Guys, in my whole life, I've never, like throw anything on the curbsides or sidewalks. I don't know why, just I don't imagine throwing my things even though they old or I don't need them like anymore. I don't imagine myself throwing something away like that. Furniture, real furniture. A tall dresser with a carved edges, a small writing desk, two heavy chairs, and a mirror wrapped in clothes like someone cared about the glass. Nothing was broken, nothing was wet, it wasn't trash, it was an unloading. I stood there with my hands in my pockets and stared at the house behind it. Curtains closed, no cars in the drive. The whole place looked empty, not neglected, like someone had left in a hurry and then thought better of coming back for the heavy stuff. I told myself if someone comes out, you put it back. That was my line in the sand. Then I pictured the stack of envelopes on my table, and now I'd been avoiding the mailbox like it was a trap. And I started lifting. I didn't toss anything, I didn't drag corners. I packed the bed of my truck like I was moving a client's antiques, blanket between pieces, straps tied, mirror upright. The entire time I waited for a door to open or a voice to call out, nothing. What did happen was worse in a quiet way. When I walked back for the last chair, the front door of the house was cracked open. I would freak out. Just to hear like it hadn't latched. I'm telling you straight, I don't know if it was like the whole time and I missed it or it changed while my back was turned. I only know my stomach dropped and suddenly the street didn't feel empty anymore. I left without rushing because rushing looks guilty. I just got in, locked the doors, and drove like every stop sign was watching me. At home, I backed into my driveway and rolled the garage door down the second I got the truck inside. Under the single yellow bulb, the pieces looked even better, solid joinery, clean lines, the kind of woodwork you don't see in flat pack stores. For the first time in months, I caught myself thinking, this might actually cover the bills. I took a few pictures and posted 2 items. Nothing fancy, just a test. Within an hour, my phone started buzzing. Serious messages, not lowball junk. Is the desk solid? Can I see the dresser tonight? Will you hold the mirror if I Venmo a deposit? I hadn't even wiped the dust off yet. That's when I went to clean the dresser because I wanted it to look right. Okay, well, the guy went really fast into, selling the items. Interesting what he got from it. I slid the drawers out one by one, smooth as butter, no sticking, no warping. I leaned in to wipe the inside and heard it. A dull knock from inside the body of the dresser. Not a drawer, not the back panel. Inside, like something shifted in a sealed space. I froze, hands still on the frame, and waited. A second later, when I tipped the dresser just an inch to check the legs, it knocked again. Oh my god, maybe that's an animal inside or something? I would be scared to death. Like whatever was in there moved on purpose, but it didn't want to be found. I'm telling you, this might be some mice there. And that's the moment the whole Lucky Carp Find story stopped being about furniture. I didn't touch it right away. I'm telling you that because I sat there for a full minute with a rag in my hand, listening my own furnace kick on and off, waiting for the normal explanation to show up. Old wood settle, snail shift, something rolled in a drawer runner. That's what I wanted it to be. So I tested the obvious stuff first. I pulled the dresser away from the wall, checked the back panel, ran my fingers along the seams. Nothing loose, no wobble. I slid my phone flashlight into the empty drawer cavity and looked for a gap, a broken rail, anything that could rattle, clean. Then I did the thing a carpenter buddy taught me years ago. I tapped the wood in a slow pattern, like you're checking a wall for studs. Front frame solid, side panel solid, then one spot, low on the right side, sounded different. Not hollow like cheap furniture, more like a box inside a box, a muttered thunk that didn't match the rest. Okay, might be not mice's, but interesting what's in there. I got down on my knees and looked closer at the right leg. The grain at the base didn't match the left side. Same stain, same style, but the direction of the wood was off by just enough to bother me, like it had been replaced or adjusted or handled more than the rest. Um, I will make a quick stop here. Just wanted to let you know that you obviously can see some shortcuts here. I hope you don't mind it. It's AI generated. I just wanted you to not just listen, but also visualize the story. I put the fingers on the leg and gave it the tiniest twist. Expecting nothing, it resisted for half a second, then moved with a soft click. Not loud, not dramatic, the kind of sound you only hear when you're already listening too hard. A thin panel on the side edge of the dresser shifted outward, maybe a quarter inch. That was it. No spring loaded secret movie door, just a gap that hadn't been there a minute ago. I just stared at it because suddenly I didn't feel alone in my own garage. That sounds crazy, but it's true. My garage is cluttered and ordinary. The little gap made it feel like a place where someone had been hiding something for a long time. I slid my hand into the opening. My knuckles scraped against old wood and my fingers hit fabric, dry, wrapped tight, and heavier than it should have been. I pulled out a bundle about the size of a sandwich, tied with brittle cord that flapped when I touched it. I took it to my workbench and unwrapped it slow. First layer was closed, then another like somebody was patting it from time and damp. Inside was a watch that didn't belong in my life. Slim gold case, delicate face, the kind of thing you see behind glass at a jewelry store, not in a dresser by the curb. Next to it were earrings and a pendant, real gold, real weight, not costume. The stones caught my lamplight in a way that made my throat go dry. I would really tell you this is a big find. The watch, the jewelry. How much money can you get from this? Interesting. And then I found the part that made me stop breathing for a second. A small paper tag folded under the watch with handwriting on it. No receipt, no a price, just two initials and a date. Initials, a date, like someone marked it on purpose, like it mattered to them enough to hide it where only they could find it again. I sat there thinking, okay, return it. That's what my first instinct. And I wouldn't be in the end of it, expected already tried to find the owners before. Just with the curb pile itself, I drove back earlier that day in the daylight and saw a bank-owned sign in the yard. No one answered the door. Neighbors barely knew anything. The bank rep I reached wouldn't take a single detail from me beyond. If it was left out, we don't handle personal property. So I'm sitting in my garage with jewelry in my hand, a date on the tag, and no owner to return it to. Well, that's a lucky moment, I guess. It's good actually that he tried to reach back and find an owner, but turned out to be that he might be the lucky guy. And while I'm staring at it, my phone buzzes with a message from one of the buyers scheduled for the next morning. Hey, quick question. Are you the guy who picked up that stuff off Ridgeview? Because someone on the street is asking around. Oh no. I read it twice. They walked over and looked out through the slats of my garage door. A car I didn't recognize was parked down the block with its lights off. I didn't open the garage door. I killed the workbench lamp, left the jewelry exactly where it was, and stood in the dark long enough to hear my own breathing settle. The car down the block stayed still, lights off, like it was waiting for me to do something dumb. So I did the least dramatic thing I could think of. I slid the bundle back into the clothes, put it inside an old coffee can, and shoved it behind a stack of paint cans on the highest shelf. That's where you usually see, like in the movies, when people are, getting inside of someone's house and trying to find something, they definitely go to kitchen and some boxes like food cans and stuff like that. Um, then I took my phone and walked into the kitchen like I was grabbing a glass of water because if someone was watching, I didn't want the show. I called the number from the bank owned sign again, but this time I didn't lead with I found jewelry. I asked for the listening agent. When I finally got a human, I said I picked up furniture that was on the curb in front of the property. One piece had personal items hidden inside. I'm trying to get it back to the previous owner or whoever handles their property. There was a pause, and then her tone changed. Less corporate, more careful. She told me two things that made the whole day snap in focus. First, the bank had hired a clean-out crew, and the instructions was basically clear it fast. Second, the crew hadn't finished the job. Apparently, someone had been back on the street that afternoon asking neighbors if anyone had grabbed anything from the curb. Not the owners, just a subcontractor trying to cover himself because he'd realized something valuable might have been inside. That explained the car. Not a movie villain, just a guy sitting in the dark hoping I'd roll up the door and hand him a problem he could disappear. The agent gave me an email and told me to send photos of what I found in the hidden compartment, and she'd forward it to the bank's asset team. She also said, please don't give anything to a random person who shows up. If it's legitimate, it will go through us or the police. I thanked her, hung up, and realized my hands were shaking not from greed, but from how close I'd come to doing the wrong thing out of fear. That's actually, I mean, it gives me like 50-50 feelings like you found something, you try to find owner, you haven't. Obviously, then you think you're lucky because now it's all yours, and then the text message, giving you understanding that finally there is an owner and they are looking for the things. That night, I did two things. I moved the rest of the furniture to the far side of my garage and set the dresser right under the security light. Then I wrote down every detail I could remember: the street, the time, the bank owned sign, the hidden panel, the initials, and date on the tag. One page, no novel, just enough that I could look someone in the eye later and no stumble. The next morning, the buyer still came. I didn't cancel because those pieces were honestly curbside. The young couple took the writing desk, the man with careful shoes took the mirror and chair, and I put the money straight into my glove box, already earmarked for groceries and the utility office. But the dresser stayed. Around noon, the listening agent called back. The bank wouldn't share the former owner's info, but they would accept the jewelry into a documented found property handoff. She gave me a choice: drop it with the local station as found property tied to the address, or meet her at the office and sign it over into the bank's file so they could store it with the rest of the recovered personal items. I chose the police station not because I wanted drama, but because I wanted a receipt with a case number, plain and boring. The officer at the front desk looked tired, like he'd seen every version of I found something. There is. He didn't act like I was a criminal. He asked where, when, and how. I told him the truth, clean and simple. He photographed the pieces, took the tag with the initials, and printed me a report number. Then he said something that surprised me. This happens more than you'd think. Clean out crews miss things, sometimes on purpose. 2 weeks later, I got a voicemail from the same officer. The former owner had been located through the bank and came in to claim the jewelry. There was no big reunion, no thank you speech, but the officer said the owner asked him to tell me one thing. The watch had been her father's, and she thought it was gone forever. She apparently cried right there at the counter when they handed it back. This is very emotional. If it's really the watch of her father and she might have lost it, I'm really glad she got it back. I sat in my truck outside my house for a long time after the message, just staring at the steering wheel. I didn't feel like a hero, I felt steady, like I'd walk right up to a cliff and manage not to step off. And here is the part that actually changed my life. The part I didn't expect. A few days after the jewelry was claimed, the listing agent reached out again. The bank's clean-out team had been fined for improper disposal, and the bank authorized a small salvage stipend for me because I documented everything and I didn't hand property to some guy in a dark sedan. It wasn't a fortune, but between that and the furniture sales, it was enough to pull me out of the rat. I paid the heat bill, I fixed the one step on my porch that had been flexing for years, I brought groceries without doing math in my head, and when my son asked how I suddenly had a little breathing room, I told him the truth. I got lucky with the car pile, and I got even luckier than I didn't let the luck turn me into someone I wouldn't recognize. The dresser is gone now, sold to collector who loves pieces with stories. Sometimes I still think about the hidden panel and how close a stranger came to talking to me into handling over a piece of somebody's history. Then I look around my kitchen at a house that's warm again and remind myself the best thing I pulled out of the furniture wasn't gold, it was a second chance I didn't ruin. Thanks for reading this. I needed to write it down somewhere that understands how weird life can get when you're just trying to make it to the next month. That's very hard, I would say, story. Already mentioned that it's giving you different emotions while you read it, and obviously when you experience something like that, you just, I guess, were lucky to end up having some, good money from it, like the right ones. So yeah, what do you guys think of this story? Please share your thoughts, your maybe own stories in the comments. And if you do like such stories, please follow me, subscribe, and yeah, see you the next time.